we're going to continue on with Bhutan and Nepal, some of my favorite areas. So Bhutan is right here, and we're going to talk about how that has to do with UTEP in a lot of ways. And then you have Nepal with Kathmandu and some really awesome places. So there's their flags. Nepal has one of the few flags that's not rectangular in the world. Most of them are rectangular, but aren't those cool flags? All right. Why do you think Nepal and Bhutan would be isolated? Well, if you remember, we talked about the Himalayas. Let me go back to the map. The Himalayas run right in here. Remember, we were saying how basically cuts off this area from China, which gives them their own cultures and religions and all that stuff and keeps them fairly separate. So, since the Himalayas go right through these countries, they are pretty isolated. They don't have large populations, people don't usually go into them, and I mean, the good part for them is people aren't usually going to invade and try to take their land because it's just hard to take. Now, they do have some outside influence. In the 1700s, China did control Bhutan. But obviously it's not that super easy to do, so, they lost control after a long time. And obviously they had other areas that they had to control. Great Britain had slight influence in those areas, but really, again, hard to get into, so they left it pretty much alone. Alright, so these both areas, they had monarchies. So you had Hindu kings who ruled Nepal, and then you had Buddhist priests controlled Bhutan, and we're talking about Buddhism a little bit. Hinduism and Buddhism are very similar in a lot of regards. The main difference is Hinduism has a lot of gods. Buddhism actually doesn't focus on any gods at all. It actually talks about enlightenment. So there's a difference between the two. Now they had constitutional monarchies, which they didn't have that until more recently, which is the ruler's powers are limited by a constitution. So very much like Britain in that regard. And in Nepal in 2008, so that was fairly recent, only 12 years ago, an agreement was made for the monarchy to be abolished, and the country became a federal republic with the prime minister becoming head of state. So they actually went further than England in that regard because they got rid of the monarchy entirely, and the prime minister is now the only head of state. But when they're ruled by constitutional monarchy, you can think very much like England. They have developing islands. They have very poor land. It's rocky. It's mountainous. It's really hard to have a farm on a slant when there's just mountain in the way. So they have a hard time really doing a lot of farming other than just subsistence farming like we were speaking of. They can grow rice, corn, potatoes, and wheat. So some things are hardy, they work in that land, other things doesn't work as well. Now they do have a lot of animals, cattle, sheep, and yaks. And there's a yak. So increasing tourism. As you can see, you have pack animals here. Mountain climbing, obviously in Nepal, and so that's where you're going to find Everest. And so those two countries are great for getting people with a lot of money, especially from the Western world, to go and try to climb mountains. And so they have a lot of hotels because obviously they have to make do for all these people coming in, so they have to stay somewhere while they're trying to get to these really hard to get to places. Now Sherpas, let's get the picture there. There we go, there's a Sherpa. There are people who live in the mountainous areas of Bhutan and Nepal. They are natives that have actually acclimated, so they can actually go to very high altitudes and not have issues breathing. Mostly everyone else, you have to acclimate if you're going to do that. Now, there are some people who go and climb Everest and stuff, and they can do it without the oxygen tanks, but I might have mentioned in class before, you kind of have to do this yo-yo thing where you basically go a little bit up the mountain, and then a little bit back down, and then a little more up the mountain, and then back down. You have to keep doing that so that you can acclimate to the higher altitude. Now, Sherpas, they've lived up there so long, they're born into it, they can deal. So they're guide climbers. They know the area. They are who you trust because you're going to die up there and you still could, but you're definitely going to die if you don't have someone who knows the terrain, knows how to live in that area. So, next few slides, we're going to talk about the UTEP and Bhutan connection. We talked about this in class. So basically, there are photographs from an article in National Geographic, Castles in the Air, and the president's wife, there it goes, Kathleen Worrell, or I should say the dean, excuse me, basically convinced to model the new campus after the monastery, since they're like, UTEP is mountainous, and Bhutan is mountainous. So this is in Bhutan, and it's on the mountainside, so they thought, well, if we're going to build our stuff on the side of the mountain, isn't it kind of the same? So that's why everyone liked the idea, and that's why this looks very much like our UTEP architecture, because we borrowed the design. So even our flags, you got the orange in there. But as you can see, this is obviously, there's way too much green, right? This is not UTEP, this is in Bhutan. But this one, you guys probably recognize this, west side. Here we go, UTEP. All right, what do you guys think? Too green, not green enough? Nope, too green. This is Bhutan. That one, oh look, the cars give it away, don't it? Doesn't it, I should say. That is UTEP. Okay, obviously we don't have any rivers. Well, we have the Rio Grande, but it's not that close, is it? So that is in Bhutan. And, oh look, it was when we had snow. So it kind of looks like the cars again gave it away, and it says UTEP down there, doesn't it? But it kind of looks like it could be in Bhutan, especially without snow, doesn't it? All right, Buddhism. So Buddhism is the official religion of Bhutan and Nepal. It has a mixture of Hinduism in Nepal. Now, it's created from Hinduism. So Hinduism is older, and it was created about 563 BC in India. And so you have Siddhartha Gautama, also known as Buddha or the Enlightened One. He was born on the Nepal-India border, and he didn't like the idea of the Hindu caste system. So his idea was to promote the correct way of living to reach an enlightened spiritual state called nirvana. Remember, nirvana is enlightened spiritual state, not necessarily the band, though I'm sure some people might like the band so much that they can get that enlightened spiritual state by listening to them. Missionaries spread Buddhist teaching from India to Southeast Asia, China, all the way to Japan and Korea. So you have Buddhism in a lot of South and Southeast Asia. And the Buddhism branches include Theravada, Mahayana, Lamaism, and Zen. And so you probably have heard of the Zen before, which is that spiritual state. It's a branch. And so there's Buddha. All right, a mandala. These are geometric designs that are symbols of the universe. So you have a lot of symbols. It's very geometric, very beautiful. Don't think they have it in here, but one of the interesting things about Buddhism is you might see the swastika, and you're thinking, wait a minute, that's a really bad symbol from Nazis. Well, actually, Hitler stole the swastika from Buddhism, and in Buddhism, it actually means this connected, it's this really nice meaning of a symbol. It means you're connected, and it has to do with enlightenment and things like that. And basically, Hitler took it and he made it a bad thing. So if you ever see swastikas in Buddhist culture, it's not the same as the Nazi one. It's actually a good symbol in this case. And I don't think we see any in this one. But isn't this pretty? And it looks kind of like their architecture, doesn't it? Especially if you were to look at it from above. So here's some more mandalas. All right. Finally, we are going to talk about Sri Lanka and the Maldives. So Sri Lanka is way down here. Let's get into this. At the tip of India. The Maldives, you can't even see. They're these teeny tiny islands off over here. So there's the Sri Lankan flag. Looks like Probably a lion holding a sword. That's pretty dang awesome. Maldives, you can see it's an Islam symbol, the crescent moon. All right. So in Sri Lanka, you have the Sinhalese, the native people from Sri Lanka. Buddhist, remember, they believe in reaching nirvana. And then you have the Tamils, which are the Dravidian Hindus from India. So these people came from India. And then you have more Buddhists that go into there. And as you can see, India is very close to Sri Lanka. So it even has probably, I mean, by the looks of it, you might be able to drive over there. At least definitely take a boat. And now in this little map, you can actually see the Maldives lit up. Okay, so their religions, they have Buddhism, Islam, and Christianity. So they have this very rich culture. They also have Kendan dancing, which is really cool. You can see this guy in this area. He's doing that. You see his rich outfit. Has a lot of Indian influence. All right, so in the Maldives, in 500 BC, Arabs came over, okay, into these islands, and in 1100 AD, it became Muslim, and then there were 6 dynasties of sultans, and you might think of sultans as being more of the Middle East area. You think sultan, the first thing you think is Aladdin, which is Persia, and that's, where Iran and those areas are now. But obviously, they came from those, and they just inhabited the islands. So you still have the same type of culture. Now, in the Maldives, you have to be Muslim. There are no other religions allowed. Most likely, you'll be persecuted if you try to be something else. Now, if you're a tourist, obviously, you're just going to have to follow some of the cultural expectations and stuff, but they're not going to expect you to, convert unless you plan on living there. Okay. So some of the economic strengths, Sri Lanka has agriculture. As you can see, they have quite a bit of tea production right behind India and China, which is a lot compared to some other places. They also have rice, tea, and rubber. Remember, we talked about rubber trees. So that's where they get that. The Maldives, it's a bunch of islands, so they're very known for their fishing. They have tuna, marlin, shark. So they have a lot of that. And you get tourism. They're beautiful, apparently. It's really good for surfing. So, great place to go. It's very beautiful. Good beaches. All right. So, in the discussion, you are going to tell me what you think is your favorite country out of the lot and why. And after that, you probably have some other assignments, but that's it for this. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thanks for listening, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.